How's it going, fat fans? Welcome to Mind for Combat. If you're new to the channel, my name's Rohan, and in this video I'm going to be talking about something that's been a hot topic in the world of mixed martial arts recently. That is just who is the greatest welterweight of all time. Now, I recently saw a video by Brendan Schaub where he's like, oh, if you don't think that Kamaru Usman's fighting better competition than St-Pierre, then you don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry, I don't buy it, Brendan Schaub, and you can say what you want. Your opinion is not more valid than mine. So we're going to go through this video. We're going to talk about this. Firstly, let's be clear about this idea that the opposition is vastly better today in 2021 than St-Pierre was fighting throughout the mid 2010s and late 2000s and 2000s, I guess. But let's talk about this. So Kamaru Usman, as great as Kamaru Usman is, he's beaten Jorge Masvidal, who was fighting during the time of St-Pierre. He's beaten Gilbert Burns, who was a lightweight, who actually I think may have been fighting during the time of St-Pierre. He weren't long into his career, but he's beaten Jorge Masvidal twice, who was fighting during the time of St-Pierre and didn't manage to get himself in a title fight. He's beaten the likes of Damian Maia, who was fighting during the time of St-Pierre, RDA, who was a lightweight during the time of St-Pierre. So this narrative that these guys are so much better than the guys that St-Pierre was fighting is just not true. But I'm going to step away from that. I'm obviously a huge St-Pierre fan, and I'm going to look at this objectively just by the facts of what they've done in their career, who they've beaten, and I'm going to talk about who is the top 5 best UFC welterweights of all time. So without further ado, let me get into this video. And at number 5, straight off the top, is Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler is the 5th best welterweight to ever win the UFC welterweight championship. Now, when we're talking about Robbie Lawler, we're talking about one of the most amazing comeback stories of all time. A guy who was touted as a young prospect to be unstoppable, went on to catch some hard losses, came to the UFC in his 30s, came back to the UFC, I should say, in his 30s, and had 9 losses to his resume, ended up becoming a world champion and defending his belt twice. Incredible career, incredible resurgence. Let's talk about that run though. Robbie Lawler had 2 world title defenses against the likes of Rory McDonald in what's probably the greatest welterweight fight of all time. Definitely my favorite welterweight title fight of all time. Then, of course, he beat Carlos Condit in another one of the best welterweight fights of all time. He had that war with Johnny Hendricks in the first fight. Then he beat Johnny Hendricks to win the title off him in their rematch. That's some good wins right there. But then when you're just looking at his record and a bit further down, you start to understand how long this man's been around. He's been fighting Nick Diaz. He's been fighting all the best guys for the longest time. Robbie Lawler sits comfortably at number 5 as the 5th best welterweight of all time and probably the most violent UFC welterweight champion of all time. At number 4, now this one was pretty hard for me because number 4 and number 3 for me is pretty much tied, so almost a joint third, you can say, but I'll call it number 4. I've got Matt Hughes. Now, Matt Hughes could easily sit at number 3, could even sit at number 2, to be honest with you, but Matt Hughes is a guy that's completely overlooked in all of these discussions. Matt Hughes has a professional mixed martial arts record of 45 wins and 9 losses. 21 of those wins were by KO, 14 of those were by submission. That's incredible. He won the welterweight championship on 2 different occasions. He defended the belt for a total of 7 defenses, and his resume just jumps out to me as being absolutely incredible. We're talking he beat Carlos Newton to become the world champion. Carlos Newton was, of course, one of the very first title holders in the UFC. I think he was the first ever UFC welterweight champion. He's beaten the likes of BJ Penn. He beat George St-Pierre. He beat Sean Shirk. He beat Matt Serra. These are all former world champions in the UFC's welterweight division, and guys that should be remembered as top tier. They should be given the respect that they deserve as well in their own right. Hayato Sakurai, one of the early legends of the game. Matt Hughes is an incredible fighter, incredibly underrated and often forgotten. Let's not forget just how good Matt Hughes was. He sits comfortably at either number 3 or 4, maybe even 2 if you want to argue it. The other man for me, who we're going to call number 3 for the list, is Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley is absolutely exceptional when he's on. When Tyron Woodley was the world champion, when he had a carefully thought out game plan, you think about his fights against Damian Maia, which may not have been the most exciting, or his fight against Darren Till, which was incredibly exciting. You look at a fighter who's incredibly well-rounded, has high-level fight IQ, and just put on a show for the fans. Tyron Woodley currently has a professional record of 19 wins and 7 losses. He, of course, won the UFC welterweight championship once back in 2016 by knocking out Robbie Lawler, and he got 4 defenses of that title, one of those was in a draw, but in that time he beat Robbie Lawler, Stephen Thompson, he beat Damian Maia, who was on a 7-fight win streak at the time, and then he beat Darren Till, who was undefeated at the time. 4 incredible wins. He looked exceptional in all of those fights. So all of these clowns out there in the YouTube boxing world putting disrespect on my man Tyron Woodley's name, that bothers me, it upsets me. I wish my channel was big enough that I could call out one of these guys to fight or something like that. So you guys need to subscribe, man. If you guys new to the channel, subscribe, blow up my channel so I can call out one of these guys and get one of these YouTube fight and get some of that YouTube paper and hold it down for mixed martial arts, man. What's going on, guys? Come on, subscribe for me. But Tyron Woodley definitely deserves a lot of respect, and he is definitely one of the top 5 welterweights of all time. At number 2, I've got Kamaru Usman. He's not number 1, it's number 2. Kamaru Usman, and to be honest with you, even his number 2 is debatable for me, right? His number 2 is debatable with Matt Hughes and Tyron Woodley. And in a way, my heart almost feels like Matt Hughes should be ahead of them just because of everything that he's done, the guys that he beat on his resume. But maybe during his time, obviously, Carlos Newton wouldn't have been a champion in this day and age. I completely respect that. John Shirk wouldn't have been a lightweight champion in this day and age. Frank Trigg wouldn't have been fighting for belts. I get it when we're talking about those guys, but it's not so true when we're talking about George St-Pierre. But Kamaru Usman is currently still fighting, still active, still in his prime. So this resume is going to grow, and my opinion may change after 3 or 4 fights, maybe even 2 fights. Let's see what happens, right? But he's not going to beat someone like Michael Chiesa and leapfrog GSP. It's just not going to happen. But Kamaru Usman stands at 19-1. He has 4 defenses of his belt currently. He's beaten Jorge Masvidal twice. He's beaten Colby Covington in one of my favorite fights of all time. He's beaten Gilbert Burns, all great wins. And of course, he beat Tyron Woodley to get that belt. Otherwise than that, he's beaten the likes of Damian Maia and RDA. Now, when we're looking at that resume, I'm going to justify why he isn't number 1. Firstly, he hasn't got as many title defenses as GSP. And secondly, when people are talking about the level of talent is so much higher, get out of here with that rubbish. It's just not true. And I know maybe I'm going to offend some people when I'm saying this, and I've kind of said it already in this video, but Jorge Masvidal, he was fighting during the time of George St-Pierre, but he was a lightweight. Yeah, and he wasn't a world championship lightweight. With all respect to my man Jorge Masvidal, he's beaten him twice. Gilbert Burns was a lightweight who came up, and he's what, 3-4 wins into his career as a lightweight. He was losing to guys like Rashid Magomedov, who's a good fighter, fair enough. But come on, let's be honest and realistic about this. His wins are good. These are not guys that would have beaten George St-Pierre. Colby Covington is the best win on his resume as far as I'm concerned, because Woodley seemed to be on a downward spiral at the time they fought, just based on what's happened after that. That seems to show that to me, so I don't feel like he fought a prime Woodley. Colby Covington is probably his best opponent. I think Colby Covington would have given George St-Pierre a lot of trouble, but I think George St-Pierre beats all of these lot. And Kamaru Usman is incredibly talented. He's got a big right hand. His stand-up is okay. He's very awkward in his movements, but where he succeeds is his chin, his conditioning, durability, and his big right hand makes him very dangerous on the feet. And then his wrestling is where he shines. He likes to grind people, push the pace. He's very, very talented, very, very dangerous. Kamaru Usman sits comfortably at number 2. It could actually be debated, so maybe not so comfortably, but Kamaru Usman at number 2. At number 1, unquestionably, very comfortably, is George St-Pierre. George St-Pierre, who went 26-2 as a mixed martial artist, won the welterweight championship on 2 occasions. Now, of course, he won the middleweight championship. It's not so relevant for this video, but he won the welterweight championships on 2 different occasions, and he had a total of 9 defenses. He had 2 losses in his career as a welterweight to Matt Hughes and Matt Serra, and he beat them both respectively in very dominant fashions. In Matt Hughes' case, he beat him twice to cap off that trilogy against another one of the best of all time. But let's just take a look at some of George St-Pierre's wins. Going all the way back to the likes of Karo Parisian when he was in his prime, Sean Shirk. He beat BJ Penn twice. BJ Penn when he was in his prime, one of the original super fights. That was one of the biggest fights that could be done at the time. BJ Penn's one of the greatest of all time. He beat Matt Hughes twice, who, as I've mentioned, is another one of the greatest of all time. John Fitch, when nobody beat John Fitch. John Fitch was 8-0 in the UFC at the time, and John Fitch is still kind of relevant now. He was fighting Rory McDonald for the Bellator title not that long ago, and he fought to draw. So John Fitch was an incredible talent. Josh Koscheck, who was dangerous, he beat him twice. He beat Carlos Condit, the former WEC welterweight champion and former UFC interim champion. Of course, so did Woodley and Lawler. I don't know if I mentioned it, but yeah. He beat Johnny Hendricks, who was flatlining everyone, and this is pre-USADA time. So GSP gets a higher level of respect for beating Johnny Hendricks than someone like Stephen Thompson gets, for example. So that was a completely different Johnny Hendricks by the time he fought. GSP fought him completely roided up, and I shouldn't say that because he never failed the drug test, so I shouldn't you know, dirty up a man's name like that. But in my opinion, anyways, George St-Pierre's resume is outstanding. Nick Diaz as well. Come on, let's be honest here. He's beaten the cream of the crop, guys that would come, and if they were in their prime, would be dominating the divisions now and be right there at the top end, would be giving Kamaru Usman a hell of a time. Guys like Nick Diaz in his prime would have given Kamaru Usman problems, in my opinion. Even Matt Hughes in his prime would have given Kamaru Usman problems. Let's not underrate everything George St-Pierre has done. At number 1, George St-Pierre remains the best welterweight of all time. Now, I'm happy to do a fight breakdown of that fight and talk about how I think that fight will go. Let me know if you guys want to see that in the comment section below. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, share, all that jazz if you're new here and all the rest of it. Thank you for watching. I'm Rohan, and this is Mind for Combat.